Has humanity ever forgot and rediscovered something? The Romans had concrete that was as good as anything made up until the second half of the 20th century because of the volcanic ash they had access to. But once their empire fell, it would be another 1200 before concrete or something similar, because popular again in construction. Also look at the Antikythera mechanism, which is from the 2nd century BC. It would be another 1,500 years before any Western civilization had that kind of technology again. Can't remember the exact case off the top of my head, but the US Air Force once lost classified blueprints for a part of a plane they needed to manufacture. Since the only plans were lost, they had to spend a shit ton on hiring engineers to figure out how they made it in the first place again. Absolutely. For example, look at what the Romans achieved, and then consider that it took centuries in some cases before we remembered things they did. Yes, we forgot how to make cement. We invented new cement, but didn't know how Romans made it in their time, until a few years ago. Greek fire, a proto-napalm used by the medieval Eastern Romans. American Indians learned how to smelt and smith copper and later forgot the technology. HTTPS. Pythagorean theorem is now known to be 1,000 years older than the person it's named for. Fog bank. For a while the US forgot how to make nukes because they couldn't replicate a crucial material from decades ago. Turns out they kept making it too pure, and the impurities were what made it good. The cure for scurvy. The ancient Egyptians put moldy bread on infected wounds. 5,000 years later, Alexander Fleming discovered that penicillium mold kills bacteria. We forgot how to make Damascus steel. We've come close to replicating it, and have learned to make possibly superior metals, but we still don't know exactly how it was done originally. The mullet hairstyle. Rubber. More accurately, the process of vulcanizing rubber. Mayans and Aztecs knew how to do it, but it was lost and rediscovered in the 1800s. The Wikipedia on rubber is a fun rabbit hole. I bet there is a lot of important ancient knowledge that was lost when the Library of Alexandria was burned. https://wikipedia.org Wiki Library of Alexandria. Writing. The Mycenaeans Greeks adapted a pre-existing script, the Linear A, to suit their Greek dialect. It's called the Linear B. After the centers of power fell around 1200 BCE, this script was forgotten. Later, Greeks adapted the Phoenician writing to their language, thus creating the alphabet. It took a great deal to learn that this Linear B was Greek, and therefore it could be deciphered. Lots of specific medical techniques. Often, it was because they were just specific tricks that people had discovered and hadn't really put into a larger scale model, so people understood them. Both the Indians and the Romans developed forms of cataract surgery before 500 BCE. Perspective in drawing. Rediscovered in the early Renaissance. We've only recently figured out why maybe Roman concrete was so durable. Potter artist Van Brigel rediscovered the lost Ming blue glaze back in 1900. From Wikipedia. One of the matte glazes perfected by artists was the matte blue glaze, based on an ancient Chinese process that had long been lost to history. Yes, surprisingly infrequently, but there are examples. The most obvious one would probably be the Viking discovery of North America. It's well established at this point that Vikings sailed across the North Atlantic and built settlements in eastern Canada around the early 11th century, then eventually left, possibly due to shifts in climate or just the lack of a good economic rationale for staying. The European sailors, who initiated the exploration age and rediscovered the Americas at the end of the 15th century, apparently had no awareness of the Viking contact 4 centuries earlier. As far as inventions go, perhaps the most notable example is fogbank, a code name for a substance used by the American military to create thermonuclear warheads in the 1970s and 1980s. This was not a radioactive material, but another important component of the thermonuclear detonation process. The nature of the material was kept so carefully secret that it was eventually lost entirely, whereupon chemists had to reverse engineer it from existing samples in the 2000s in order to maintain the aging Cold War weapons. Its actual composition is still a military secret. Many ancient languages. We still occasionally find one previously thought lost in uncovered slates or cave markings or whatever and decode them and figure out how they worked. The Romans had roads and sanitation and indoor heated baths and indoor heated floors in the UK. The barbarians invaded sacked Rome, the Romans left the UK, and there were 300 years of the Dark Ages.